Testing. All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep. All right, let's get this started. Hotep, how's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. So it is Thursday, December 19th, 2019, and we are live. Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. And I'm broadcasting from my second laptop, my backup laptop, because I'm having problems with my main laptop. So I have to get on the I got to get on the phone with customer service and figure this out. Okay, so what I have been telling people was going to happen happened on December 18th, 2019. Donald John Trump, he's really the 44th president, not the 45th president, because Stephen Grover Cleveland was elected to 2 non-consecutive terms as president. So there have only been 44 U.S. presidents under the U.S. Constitution. I know people like to call them 45, but since starting with George Washington, there have not been 45 presidents. There have been 44. So if you count starting with George Washington all the way to Benedict Donald, there have been 44 presidents. But anyway, he became the third president to be impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay, so how's everybody doing? So share this broadcast. So I'm gonna talk more in depth about this on my Sunday night show, the African History Network show, which is on Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I'm going to deal with this a little bit here, and deal with a little bit dealing with the impeachment process and what's next, the trial in the U.S. Senate. Because unfortunately, a lot of our people don't understand history or law and don't understand the U.S. Constitution, things like this, right? So we're gonna jump into this, okay? Then also African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion: buy 1 month, get 2 months free. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. So going back to January of 2017, okay? If you follow my show, you listen to me on 910 a.m. the Superstation WFDF in Detroit. You follow me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, or Facebook, the African History Network. Going back to January 2017, I've been saying that Donald Trump was going to be impeached. Okay? And when I said that, that was before Democrats took back control of the House of Representatives in the November 2018 midterm elections. I was predicting in January of 2017, when he took the oath of office, January 20th, 2017, that he would be impeached, because I was warning our people and other people, anybody who listened, I was warning us about Trump before the 2016, November 8th, 2016 election. I was warning him about things I was researching, his behaviors, etc. Okay, so he really impeached himself. Actually, if you want to, if you want to be honest, Nancy Pelosi was correct. She said he was going to self-impeach. He actually did. It was his own actions. Okay, how's everybody doing? Martisha, Gigi, Riley, John Ray. How's everybody doing? Okay, so let's look at this article here from NBCnews.com. I'm going to look at a few articles that I've been reading here, and I was watching a lot of the proceedings yesterday dealing with this in the House of Representatives. Trump impeached by the House for abuse of power, obstruction of justice. Trump impeached by the House for abuse of power, obstruction of justice. All right. So for the third time in the nation's history, the House of Representatives voted to impeach a sitting president, acting after a day-long debate on whether Donald Trump violated his oath of office in pressuring Ukraine to damage a political opponent. Yes, he did violate his oath of office, but he has no integrity, so that doesn't mean anything to him. So Trump was impeached on 2 articles. The first vote was 230 to 197. That was the article of abuse of power, and it was almost entirely along party lines. It was followed quickly by a second vote, which was 229 to 198, and that was on the second article of impeachment, accusing him of obstructing Congress in their investigation. Okay, so the one vote difference was that of Democrat Jared Golden of Maine, who voted yes on abuse of power and no on obstruction of justice. So you had 31 Democrats who in the November 2018 midterm elections won seats in districts that Donald Trump won in 2016. So there was some speculation of who was going to side with Trump because they are in Trump districts, etc. But almost all of them voted to impeach him. Okay. Now we know Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a Democrat, and she's running for president. Don't know why, but she's running for president. She voted present as opposed to actually voting to impeach him. She's a nut. Just put it bluntly, she's a nut. Okay, and she's not going to be on the debate stage for the next debate. And good. Okay, so she. Some people speculate. That. Well, I'm not going to say that. Okay. Anyway. Right, so no Republicans voted against Donald Trump. However, we do know that former Republican Representative Justin Amash of Michigan, who left the Republican Party and became an independent, we know he voted to impeach Donald Trump. Okay, so when Republicans say this was not bipartisan, that's not true. It was bipartisan. They're not counting Justin Amash, who is an independent. It was bipartisan. So no Republicans voted against Trump. Two Democrats, Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, who is expected to leave the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party, and also Colin Peterson of Minnesota voted with Republicans against both articles of impeachment. Now, the trial in the Republican-controlled U.S. Senate on whether to remove Donald Trump from office will likely begin in January 2020. It is likely that Trump will be acquitted. This, based upon, this is what all the prognosticators are saying. He's going to be acquitted in the U.S. Senate because it takes 67 votes in the Senate to convict. However, there are going to be some hurdles that they have to jump over. Okay, and I'm going to get into some of this. The other thing is even if Trump is acquitted in the U.S. Senate, he still goes down as an impeached president, just like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was impeached December 19th, 1998. He was acquitted he was impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives. He was acquitted in the U.S. Senate. Being acquitted in the U.S. Senate does not remove that permanent stain on you of being impeached. There is a permanent stain on Trump forever as an impeached president, and rightfully so. He deserves every bit of it. So now we know that Nancy Pelosi said Wednesday, and then she did a press conference today, stating that she talked about a delay in sending over the articles of impeachment because the Senate has to determine what the rules are for the trial, and she needs to know who the managers of the trial for the Democrats, who the managers are going to be in the Senate. The managers are going to be the ones who actually prosecute the case in the Senate. So based upon what the rules are, that determines who she picks to actually prosecute the case. Okay, so this was for some people, this was an unforeseen hurdle. Now, if you've been watching The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC, or if you've been watching Joanne Reed's show, AM Joy on MSNBC, Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe was the first one who said that Democrats can convict Trump in the House of Representatives. I'm sorry, Democrats can impeach Trump in the House of Representatives And they could not send over the articles of impeachment to the U.S. Senate, so there would be no trial in the Senate, because there's nothing in the Constitution stating that the House of Representatives has to send over the articles of impeachment to the U.S. Senate. There's nothing in the Constitution saying that they have to do that. So theoretically, Nancy Pelosi, who controls this, because she's the Speaker of the House of Representatives, theoretically, she could just decline. Now, they probably would not do that, because that would be unfair, and then that deprives the Senate from their constitutional obligation to hold a trial in the Senate once the articles of impeachment have been sent over. But there's nothing stating that the House of Representatives has to send over the articles of impeachment, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm going to get to this in just a second, because the reason why, one of the reasons why Nancy Pelosi is saying this, and some other Democrats in leadership are saying this, Steny Hoyer, Representative Steny Hoyer, who is the majority leader, and the reason why some of them are saying this is because Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already said that he's not going to be impartial. Okay, he's already pushing for a short trial. He's pushing for an acquittal. He's already telegraphing this. He was interviewed by Sean Hannity on Fox News last Thursday, and he said basically there's no way that the president is going to be found guilty in the U.S. Senate. He basically said he didn't want any witnesses, things like this, right? Then we also know that Senator Lindsey Graham as well. Senator Lindsey Graham said he didn't want any witnesses. He said that he's basically also said, Senator Lindsey Graham said that he's not going to be impartial, etc. Now, they take all of the U.S. senators, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or independent, like Senator Angus King and Senator Bernie Sanders, who is an independent until it's time to run for president. This is not an attack on Bernie Sanders, but this is the truth. Bernie Sanders is an independent until it's time to run for president. When it's time to run for president, then he becomes a Democrat. Now, it is true that Bernie Sanders votes with Democrats the majority of the time, but no, Bernie Sanders is a registered independent. When you go to his Senate page, because all members of the U.S. Senate have a page on Senate.gov. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. When you go to his Senate page, it says he's an independent. When he wants to run for president, he joins the Democratic Party. When he ran in 2016, he joined the Democratic Party. Then when he went back to the Senate, he went back to being an independent. Now he's running again for president, so now he joins the Democratic Party, and now he's a Democrat again. I know he said Democrat Socialist, but now he's a Democrat again. Okay? So we'll see if he loses, will he go back to being an independent? But that's another conversation. Okay, I just find that very interesting, though. But in the U.S. Senate, the jurors, because this is a type of a trial, it's not a criminal trial. Okay, it's not a criminal trial, so no one is going to go to prison, even though Trump should, but no one's going to go to prison here. It's a type of trial. The jurors are the U.S. senators. They take an oath to be impartial at the beginning of the trial. Okay? This is on top of the oath that they take when they're sworn in to be a U.S. senator to defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. Okay? Just like they do in the House of Representatives. They take that oath. But in the Senate, before the impeachment trial, they take an additional oath to be impartial. Well, Mitch McConnell and Senator Lindsey Graham have basically already said they're going to violate that oath because they're not going to be impartial. So this is what's causing apprehension here with Nancy Pelosi. But I'll get to that in just a second here. Okay. Read the article from yahoo.com. So this past Sunday on my show, the African History Network show, I dealt with this, and I played the clip of Mitch McConnell being interviewed by by Sean Hannity on Fox News, okay? And let me just say this quickly here. How's everybody doing? We got Ethel, we have Dupree, and Inez. Just bear with me a little bit because this is not the laptop I normally broadcast on. My main laptop, which I've only had a year, it's a Hewlett Packard. I'm having problems with it. So this is my backup laptop, so things are a little off for me here, okay? So just bear with me. I got to get this main laptop fixed, okay? But go watch the broadcast I did, my December 15th, 2019 broadcast of the African History Network show. Okay, we have it here on Facebook, and it's on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. All right, and I get into I deal with the interview that Mitch McConnell did. Mitch McConnell bragged, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senator of Kentucky, bragged about blocking President Obama's federal judge nominations, and he bragged about blocking President Obama's nomination for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland. Okay, read this article from Yahoo.com, and I'll post a link here when we're done. Mitch McConnell brags about blocking Obama for 2 years, then laughs about it. And in this interview on Fox News, now you got to keep in mind, this was not a private telephone conversation that Sean Hannity was having with Mitch McConnell. This was an interview on Fox News, okay? Sean Hannity said, quote, "I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions." Okay, he's talking about vacancies on the federal bench because there were about 103 vacancies for federal judgeships on the federal bench when President Obama left office. Obama didn't leave those vacancies so much as he was blocked from filling them by a GOP-controlled Senate led by Mitch McConnell. Okay, so Mitch McConnell talked about how he blocked them. Mitch McConnell talked about how he blocked them. He said, quote, "I'll tell you why. I was in charge of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration." Okay, so Sean Hannity says, "I will give you full credit for that. And by the way, take a bow." Okay, so McConnell in this interview is bragging about blocking these federal judge nominations that President Obama made. And President Obama also nominated African American women to be federal judges as well. These federal judge nominations, these positions are lifetime appointments. So Donald Trump has gotten 174 federal judges confirmed. He's nominated now 1/4 of the federal judges. These are lifetime appointments. Okay, and what they're doing is, with the help of Moscow Mitch McConnell in the U.S. Senate. See, this is how elections have consequences. We all understand this. This is how elections have consequences. They're changing the landscape of the federal bench. This all has to do with 2043, the year 2043, when there will be no one race or ethnic group that's the majority population in this country. White people will not be a majority population in this country, is predicted by demographers by 2043. So you have some white people who fear this. And what Republicans are doing is, because they see that they have a declining population, because white people have a negative birth rate in 26 states out of 50. That's not me, that's the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, 26 states out of 50. If we look at the article from the New York Times, fewer births than deaths. This is from the New York Times. This came out in, I think it was 2018 or 2019. We'll pull up this article. This talks about the information from the information from the U.S. Census Bureau that came out in June of 2018 that revealed that white people have a negative birth rate in 26 states out of 50. 2 years before that, in 2016, it was 17 states out of 50. And one of the things that really contributes to this is the opioid addiction. So because you have right-wingers, because you have Republicans who see that they have a negative birth rate, they're losing population, and the Republican Party is a shrinking party. It's not a growing party. It's a shrinking party. What they want to do is they want to control the courts for the next 25, 30, 35, 40 years. Because U.S. Supreme Court, those nominations, those confirmations are for life. And the federal judge ships, that's for life. So they're nominating, Trump is nominating ultra-conservative federal judges, most of them white males, that are 37, 38, 39 years old. So they can be on the federal bench for the next 40 years. If they're 37, they can be there till they're 77, 78, 79, 80 years old. It's a lifetime appointment. All right? Read this article from the New York Times. Fewer births than deaths among whites in majority of U.S. states. New York Times, June 20th, 2018. Okay? The Census Bureau has projected that whites could drop below 50% of the population around the year 2045, a relatively slow-moving change that has been years in the making. But a new report this week found that whites are dying faster than they are being born in now 26 states, up from 17 just 2 years earlier, and demographers say that shift might come even sooner. So this is what this is all about. This is about the fear of the browning of America. That's what this is all about. And Trump is getting he's getting the names for these nominations from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, two very ultra right-wing conservative organizations. Okay? So back in 2016, when I was seeing dozens of interviews with various Trump supporters, they said, and people who were going to vote for Trump. You had hardcore Trump supporters, but you had some people who were reluctantly voting for Trump because they saw him as the person to fulfill their agenda. After the other Republican candidates were knocked off, Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and some of the other ones, right? They ended up with Trump, but they saw Trump as fulfilling their agenda. Their agenda was to get control of the courts. They said this is about the courts. They said this is about the U.S. Supreme Court. They said this is about overturning Roe versus Wade, 1973 U.S. Supreme Court decision. They said this is about the federal courts. So many African Americans, we don't understand anything like that. They're planning 25, 30, 35 years in advance. Many of us don't even understand that. So when we talk about our issues, we ain't even talking about the courts. We don't even understand the impact that this has, and don't understand that if you go to the federal courts, and then the federal courts of appeal, which is the level below the U.S. Supreme Court, one out of 4 judges have been nominated by Trump. And they were selected because they hold values to push the Trump agenda. So when you deal with things like collective bargaining for unions, when you deal with affirmative action in colleges, when it goes through the court system and the appeals court and goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, 1 out of 4 judges have been nominated by Trump. We don't understand anything like this. See, this is how elections have consequences. All right. And then we just saw that the mandate in the Affordable Health Care Act was just struck down in court. I'm not sure who nominated that judge, but this all deals with law. Okay? So politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. All right, so this is what the game is. So Mitch McConnell, Fox News, Donald Trump, all this, they're focusing on gaining control of the courts because this is all about the fear of the browning of America. All right, now I'm not saying all white people fear the browning of America, but a lot of them do. Okay, for various reasons. And Fox News and right-wing conservative talk radio is helping to fuel a lot of this fear and demonization of African Americans, demonization of Hispanics, non-white people, okay? The Laura Ingrams, the Mark Levins, the Rush Limbaughs, the Sean Hannitys, okay? The Tucker Carlsons, Okay, right-wing conservative radio and right-wing conservative TV, cable news, especially Fox News. All right, so all right, let's continue here. So minutes before the vote on Wednesday night, Wednesday, December 18th, Trump took to the stage at a campaign rally in Battle Creek, Michigan. I saw that. I mean, that was deplorable. That was despicable. Then he attacked Representative John Dingell, who's deceased. Okay, and I mean, he just has no he has no morality. He has no decency, anything like this. And he's thin-skinned because if somebody attacks him, okay, his feelings get hurt. But you're attacking Representative John Dingell, who's dead, okay, who was the longest serving member of the House of Representatives. He served like 54 years, and you're in his state that he served, okay. And also, he actually served in the military as well, because you were too much of a coward to serve in the military. That's why you got 5 deferments, because you're too much of a coward to go fight in the Vietnam War. But that's another conversation. But hours before the vote, Speaker Nancy Pelosi took to the House floor to say it was imperative to impeach a president for the first time in decades because Trump is, quote, an ongoing threat to our national security and the integrity of our elections, end quote. And she's correct on that. If you look at the 658-page report came out a couple of days ago, the report from the House of Representatives, from the House Judiciary Committee, dealing with impeachment. And they talked about how Donald Trump is a clear and present danger. Okay, and Donald Trump is the president that the founding fathers were feared, okay, who would be influenced by a foreign power. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi said, quote, it is an established fact that the president violated the Constitution. Nancy Pelosi said, standing next to a sign with a U.S. flag that quoted a line from the Pledge of Allegiance, quote, to the republic for which it stands. Now, emotions ran high inside the Capitol ahead of the vote, with Democrats and Republicans accusing one another of acting in bad faith during the 10-hour debate. And I saw a lot of it. You know, a lot of Republicans just lying. And when you watched a lot of the Republicans, the Jim Jordans, the Louis Gohmerts, Kevin McCarthy spoke yesterday as well. When you watched a lot of the Republicans, they were largely complaining about the process because they couldn't really debate on the facts. And the other thing was, Chris Matthews on MSNBC pointed this out after the hearing, after the 10-hour debate. He said none of the Republicans stood up for Trump and said he's a good man, he's a decent man, he has good character, things like this. None of them stood up for Trump to say something like that. All right, so now Democrats. So when we look at, I talked about this. So I encourage people to read the articles of impeachment. Okay, it's 9 pages, and I have them here. Let's see here. I have them here. You can get them from NBCnews.com, CBSNews.com, ABCNews.go.com, Washington Post, New York Times. So I encourage people to read the articles of impeachment because it really explains a lot of this. But Democrats accuse their counterparts of willfully turning a blind eye to Donald Trump's misdeeds, and they are in public. Now, behind closed doors, they tell you they would say they know he's wrong, but they're afraid that he'll tweet about them if they come out and have a backbone, okay, and call him out on his stuff. They're afraid that they would be primaried. They're afraid because he has 64 million Twitter followers, that their constituents will turn against them and vote them out of office. Now, half his Twitter followers are probably Russian bots. I wouldn't be surprised, okay? But still, you know, he does have a lot of Twitter followers. And it's even worse when they keep writing articles about the stupid stuff he keeps tweeting about, okay? Because he reaches people that don't even follow him on Twitter. He reaches people that don't even use social media. But it's better to stand up for principles and stand up because you took an oath to defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. It's better to stand up and defend that than try to protect your job. If you lose your seat on principle, just go get another job. If you lose your seat standing up for principles, then just go get another job. People will respect you more for that than for you to be an accomplice to a traitor. So Democrats accuse their counterparts of willfully turning a blind eye to Donald Trump's misdeeds. They said there was ample evidence that Trump had abused his power by pressuring Ukraine to announce investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden while withholding $391 million in aid, and that he had obstructed Congress by refusing to release documents related to his actions. But not only that, not only did he not release any documents, and these were documents that were subpoenaed, but also there were 12 people that were subpoenaed to testify, and he's blocking them from testifying also, including people who were on the call, like Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, but also former National Security Advisor John Bolton has been subpoenaed as well. So Trump is blocking people who have information from testifying. So you have to ask the question, why? Because if you are claiming your innocence and there are witnesses who can prove that you're innocent, why wouldn't you want them to testify? Unless it's something that you're trying to hide. So Representative Jim McGovern, Democrat from Massachusetts, said, quote, the president withheld congressionally approved military aid to Ukraine, a country under siege, not to fight corruption, but to extract a personal political favor. He's correct. Especially if you read the July 25th memorandum of the call. And let me just say this again. I said this Sunday night on the show. Let me just say this again, because some people haven't figured this out. All right, and where is I've got the memorandum of the call here. So I see people wearing a T-shirt that says "Read the transcript," but when you actually read what they're calling a transcript, it's not a transcript, it's a memorandum of a call. I posted about that on Facebook today. So when you actually read this, you can get this on NBCnews.com, okay? It tells you right here, memorandum of telephone conversation. It doesn't say transcript, it says memorandum of telephone conversation, okay? Then at the bottom, regardless of which news source you get this from, it's going to tell you this here at the bottom, caution, because this is what the White House put out, okay? It tells you down here at the bottom, it says caution, a memorandum of a telephone conversation is not a verbatim transcript of a discussion. The text in this document records the notes and recollections of Situation Room duty officers and National Security Council policy staff assigned to listen and memorialize the conversation in written form as the conversation takes place. So it tells you right here that it's not a transcript. So when I see people at Donald Trump at Trump rallies standing behind them wearing T-shirts that say "Read the transcript," then you have to ask the question, what transcript are they referring to? Because it tells you here this is not a transcript. And Trump has not released the actual verbatim transcript of the call. So you have to ask the question, why? The Daily Show on Comedy Central, they went out in the field, they went to a Trump rally, and rawstory.com has an article about this, and actually on the 11th hour on MSNBC, Brian Williams did a segment on this a couple of nights ago. Okay, and I'll play this clip on my show Sunday night. They went to a Trump rally. They interviewed 3 or 4 Trump supporters. They all said, "Read the transcript." So when the correspondent asked them, "Have you read the transcript?" they said no, they hadn't read the transcript. They're just repeating what Trump said, and they called it a transcript. It's not a transcript. So a lot of these people, if you just let them talk long enough, you'll find out they have no clue what the hell they're talking about. They're just repeating talking points they heard on Fox News and they heard from Trump. Because when you ask them what's in it, they can't tell you. The other thing is, if you look at the article, and I talked about the Sunday night show, be sure to go watch the Sunday night show because I go deep into this, okay? The 8 times Trump urged Ukraine's leader to help with investigations. This is from abcnews.go.com. It's an analysis of that July 25th call. There were 8 times in that call just from what the White House released, because they didn't release the full call. Just from what they released, there were 8 times in that July 25th call that Donald Trump urged Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and also the Ukraine conspiracy theory about that the DNC server is in Ukraine. Okay, this right here. Read this as well. Okay, so Representative Jim McGovern, Democrat from Massachusetts, went on to say, quote, "The President of the United States endangered our national security. The President undermined our democracy, betrayed his oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." Yes, he did. That's true. "No one should be allowed to use the powers of the presidency to undermine our elections, period." Okay, Representative Jim McGovern said. All right. Now, we have to understand the only reason why Trump is impeached is because African Americans, some white people with some sense, some woke white people, Hispanics, Asians, voted in November 2018 midterm elections, and they voted Republicans out of office and voted Democrats to take control of the House of Representatives. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why he was impeached, because Democrats control the House of Representatives. That's the only reason why this happened. And he had to be impeached. The reason why is because because of the U.S. Constitution, and everybody should go to loc.gov, because unfortunately most people haven't read the Constitution. I'm looking at stuff people are posting on social media, things they're saying. I could tell either they never read it or don't understand what they read. Go to loc.gov, which is the Library of Congress website. loc.gov, search for U.S. Constitution. Go to archives.gov, search for U.S. Constitution. How you doing, Jessica, Shalonda, Tamikia? Is it Tamika or Tamikia? Okay, Gisette. Americans are woefully ignorant of history and law, and history and law intersect. Okay. You're dealing with the Philadelphia Convention. You're dealing with the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. Also, you got to read the Federalist Papers. So the Federalist Papers, I talked about this Sunday, right? The Federalist Papers consist of 85 letters written to newspapers in the late 1780s to urge ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Because after the Constitution was signed September 17, 1787, there were 39 signers of the Constitution. Then it had to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures. Okay, so the ratification took place in 1788, but the drafters of the Constitution they're writing letters and sending them to newspapers to be printed in newspapers so people can read it, because the state legislatures have to vote on it. So it's influencing people and explaining the Constitution and different parts of the Constitution, so that the members of the state legislatures will vote on it. So when we look at amending the Constitution, there have been 27 amendments to the Constitution. And part of the process to amend the Constitution is that after it passes the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate by a 2/3 majority vote, it also has to pass 3/4 of the state legislatures by a 2/3 majority vote as well. So when I hear people talking about they need to get rid of the 13th Amendment, well, there's a legal process to amend the Constitution. Most people don't understand the legal process to amend the Constitution. Part of that process means the state legislatures have to vote on it, which means you also have to vote for members of your state House of Representatives and state Senate. Because if you got the wrong people in the state House of Representatives and the state Senate, they're not going to vote on it. So the state houses are extremely important for a number of reasons. Not just that, but it's the state houses that redraw the district lines every 10 years based upon the results of the U.S. Census. See, all this, most of these things, we don't understand any of this stuff. So you can get a book like this. So this is from Dover Books. I got this years ago. The Declaration of Independence and Other Great Documents of American History, 1775 to 1865. This is about $2 when I got it, maybe $5, something like this. But it has all of them in there. Declaration of Independence, Gettysburg Address. It has the U.S. Constitution. But you can go to loc.gov, which is the Library of Congress website, and archives.gov, okay? Udell said African Americans were slaves with the exception of a few when the Constitution came about. Do you think it applied to African Americans? Well, one, depended upon what your status was. Because if your status was more, yes, it applied to you. Because Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution specifically states that the U.S. Constitution, all the previous treaties, and all the subsequent treaties are the supreme law of the land. We know there were Moors here. How do we know? Read chapter 2 of Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. He talks about the names that we had before Europeans got here. Moor, Blackamoor, Nager, and Nagar. N-E-G-E-R and N-E-G-A-R. Not the N-word. There's something different. The whole way this thing evolves is totally different than what we think happened. The whole way this thing evolves is totally different than what actually happened. And then also there was a small population of free African Americans. But after the Civil War, you had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments as well. Because quote unquote African Americans, blacks, etc. are written into the Constitution. Okay, so let's continue here. But no, we don't understand history or law. Just like the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution that people mistakenly think said we were three-fifths of a human being. That's not what that says. That's talking about for the purpose of taxation and apportionment. Apportionment determines how many seats in the House of Representatives different states will have. And they're trying to figure out how do you count the slave population. They're going back and forth. Some people say count half the population. Others say count 3/4 of the population. The North is saying, well, if you the South wants the full population counted. The northern states are saying, well, if you count the full population, then you're going to have an unfair advantage in the House of Representatives. You'll control most of the seats in the House of Representatives. You'll just be able to pass through whatever bills you want. So they agreed to count 3/5 of the population. It's not saying, when you actually understand it and then you read the Federalist Papers and you study the history behind the words, it's not saying that they were 3/5 of a human being. That's a misunderstanding. And I love Malcolm. You see a picture of Malcolm behind me. But in 1963, at the University of Berkeley in California, when Malcolm was interviewed and he said the Constitution said we were 3/5 of a human being, that's a total misunderstanding of history. But what 99% of the people don't say is Section 2 of the 14th Amendment corrected the way the count was taken. So the way to count, because it's dealing, once again, is dealing with determining how many seats in the House of Representatives a particular state will have. They're trying to figure out how do you count the slave population. But at the same time, the full population of free African Americans was counted. This is something that people don't know. Well, a lot of people don't know. So just very quickly here, if we look at Article 1, Section 2, the House of Representatives shall be comprised, skip down to Section 3. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed 3/5 of all of the persons with a capital P. It's not saying they were 3/5 of a human being. It's dealing with how do you count that slave population in Virginia? How do you count that slave population in Delaware, in Maryland? Do you count the full population? Do you count half the population? It's dealing with for the purpose of, it tells you specifically, for the purpose of taxation and representation. It says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned. Apportion is dealing with how do you count this? That's what that's dealing with. But when you read the Constitution, it has an asterisk there. It has an asterisk there for Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Why is the asterisk? Because Section 2 of the 14th Amendment corrected it. So the full population is counted. It's not saying they're 3/5 of a human being. It's counting the population for representation in the House of Representatives. That's what that's dealing with. For further explanation, because I don't have time to get deeper into this, read the article from theroot.com that Dr. What's his name? I forgot. I interviewed him. He's written a number of books. He's a history professor. But hold on. Read this article from theroot.com. It goes deep into this. And this professor was speaking at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. I interviewed him on my show because we were talking about Thomas Jefferson, the history of Thomas Jefferson. He's written about 50 books. One of the books he wrote on Thomas Jefferson. But he wrote an article for theroot.com. It's probably the best article explaining this. 3/5 clause, why its taint persists. 3/5 clause, why its taint persists. And see, this is what I'm explaining to people who talk about a black agenda. To be able to put together a black agenda, you need to understand history and law. Because the predicament that we're in right now is because of policies and laws. And you're dealing with historical events. And laws and policies help to shape these historical events. Dr. Paul Finkelman. Dr. Paul, because I interviewed Dr. Paul Finkelman, and this is one of the things that we discussed. 3/5 clause, why its taint persists. He wrote an extensive article for theroot.com. It's probably one of the best articles I've seen dealing with this. And he goes deep into this, okay? And he also deals with Thomas Jefferson winning the presidency in the year 1800 because of the 12 electoral college votes associated with Virginia, okay? Because at the time, Virginia had the largest population, and that was because of the slave population, okay? Because see, you had, at the time the Constitution is signed, you had northern states that had a larger population of free people, but southern states had a larger total population when you counted the enslaved Africans. Okay, and then the other thing is all these laws, all these policies and laws that we're dealing with right now, all this impacts African Americans either positively or negatively. And one thing I explained, I just did a broadcast. I forgot which one it was because I'm doing so much. Some politicians do have a black agenda. They have an anti-black agenda. And an anti-black agenda is even worse than not having a black agenda. I mean, not having a positive black agenda. See, a lot of them, Donald Trump, when you study his policies, Donald Trump has an anti-black agenda. So those politicians like that are the first ones that have to be identified because you got to stop them. See, there's a difference between being indifferent to your condition or not really understanding your condition. Okay? There's a difference between that and purposely putting policies in place to hurt you, to do you harm. That's an anti-black agenda. So like 95% of the people who are here talking about the black agenda, they ain't talking about they're not talking about stopping the politicians who have an anti-black agenda. Even if a candidate or a politician does not have a quote unquote black agenda, their policies they can still have policies that benefit you. You got to go read them. That's why I tell them all the not just presidential candidates, but those running for Congress, U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, because Congress is a co-equal branch of government. Most of the bills, unless it's an executive order, before the president signs it into law, it has to pass through Congress. We don't understand how important the U.S. House of Representatives and especially the U.S. Senate is, because the U.S. Senate is the one that confirms the Supreme Court justices, and they're the ones that confirm the federal judges. This is why Republicans worked so hard to gain control of the U.S. Senate in 2014. Democrats lost control of the U.S. Senate in 2014, and they haven't been able to get it back. This is why Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the Senate, working along with Donald Trump, are able to push these federal judges through. The American Bar Association has come out against some of these nominations and said these people are totally unqualified to be federal judges, and most of them are still getting approved because Republicans don't care. They're following an agenda. All right, so let's continue. So all of these candidates, I encourage you to read their policies at their websites. Okay? When you talk about criminal justice reform, when you talk about investing in education, okay? When you talk about climate change, all this stuff impacts African Americans. For instance, a lot of people don't know the U.S. prison population dropped to its lowest point in 20 years under President Obama. It dropped from 2.3 million down to 1.53 million, December 2016. Not only that, the percentage of African Americans in prison dropped from 40% to 34%. This is being reversed under Trump, by the way. Read the document, Progress of the African American Community under the Obama administration. It's at whitehouse.gov. Trump hasn't taken it down yet. I got it around here somewhere. And it shows you how policies from the Obama administration positively impacted African Americans. Many of these are policies that various groups, civil rights groups, things like this were fighting for. The Affordable Health Care Act, which Republicans are trying to kill right now, gave health care to 3 million non-elderly black people who did not already have health care. And what this did was this extended the lifespan of many African Americans. A lot of people don't know this. Today, less people overall today have health insurance than when President Obama left office, because Republicans have been taking away subsidies for the Affordable Health Care Act. They've been trying to kill it. We saw the open enrollment just ended. You probably didn't see any commercials for open enrollment because last year Trump cut the marketing budget for open enrollment by 90%. And then they also reduced the number of days that you can enroll in the Affordable Health Care Act. They reduced that by 50%. So read this here. This is at whitehouse.gov. Now this was up during the Obama administration. Just a lot of people don't read it. Progress. I'll post a link here. Because every city I lecture in, I ask people have they read it, and nobody's read it. I find that hard to believe. Okay. Yeah, it's still at whitehouse.gov. Trump must not know it's there. Okay, let's see here. All right, I'm going to continue here, and I'm going to get into the stuff with Nancy Pelosi so we can see this. Because this was something I saw it coming, but a lot of people didn't know what was happening. Because I've seen a number of interviews with Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe, who said that the House of Representatives can do this. Okay. All right, African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. Okay, a lot of people want to get their financial house in order, and they're looking at, they want to do more with the money that they have, and working with John Ray. John Ray can help you with this. His business is My Econ, and he has a concept that is called income shifting. Okay, income shifting, and income shifting allows you to take the money that you have, and it allows you to take your money back from those who are taking it from you. Okay, and that's thousands of dollars that are lost oftentimes in a year. So income shifting is a group of financial strategies that allow John Ray to go from living from paycheck to paycheck to investing and not focusing on where his next paycheck is coming from. Visit workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com for more information. All right, if you're in the market for a new or used car, visit Car Marshall. Okay, click on the link below. Car Marshall, you shop, we negotiate. They have over 100,000 new and used cars from dealers. Car Marshall, you shop, we negotiate. Click on the link below for Car Marshall. All right, let's see here. Everyone with the right to vote should exercise their right to vote. Yeah, that's true. Now, we have to vote strategically. Don't just vote. Vote strategically. When you vote, we have to vote based upon understanding how the policies of candidates are going to impact us, especially as a collective, not just individually, because it could be beneficial to you individually and detrimental to your people. So that's why we have to look at their policies and understand how their policies impact us. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay? So when you talk about criminal justice, when you talk about the environment, when you talk about rolling back regulations, okay, regulations are usually put in place to protect people. When you look at the every year, every September, the census comes out with a report on income and poverty. Okay, there's a census report that comes out every 10 years, but there's an annual census report that comes out every September that really shows you the impact that policies have. Okay, so Washington Post and New York Times have been writing a lot of articles dealing with different aspects of the census report that came out in 2019. So there was one that dealt with air quality, and under Trump, the quality of air across the country, not just in African American communities or not just in white communities, but the quality of air has deteriorated over the past 3 years. This is tied to Trump rolling back regulations dealing with the environment that came from the Obama administration, and then regulations from previous administrations that President Obama kept in place. Air pollution is getting worse, and data show more people are dying. This is from Washington Post. Eroding air quality was linked to 10,000 additional U.S. deaths over a 2-year period. This article is from October 23rd, 2019. Air pollution worsened in the United States in 2017 and 2018. New data shows a reversal after years of sustained improvement with significant implications for public health. In 2018 alone, eroding air quality was linked to nearly 10,000 additional deaths in the U.S. Relative to the 2016 benchmark, the year in which small particle pollution reached a 2-decade low, according to researchers at Carnegie Mellon University. You can read the entire article, but all this impacts us, whether the policy says black or African American or not. All these policies impact us usually either positively or negatively. And a lot of times it impacts us negatively, but we don't know it. Because a lot of times these are policies we don't even know exist. Okay? All right, so check out this article here. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay the bills, helps us finance our Sunday night show that I do on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF when we broadcast here on Facebook Live. So you see me in the radio studio. That's our Sunday night show. Okay. All right. Let's continue here and we post this information here. Okay. So let's go back to this article here from NBCnews.com. Trump impeached by the House for abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. All right. And Trump had to be held accountable. Okay. Even if he's not removed from office. See, people have to understand this is also about the future. Because 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 6 years from now, you can have another president that's even worse than Trump. You can have another president that's even worse than Trump. Maybe a Democrat, maybe a Republican, maybe an independent. Who knows? But if Democrats did not hold this president accountable and impeach him, then in the future, another president can say, well, wait a second. When Democrats had control of the House of Representatives and they were dealing with Donald Trump, with what he was doing with Ukraine and Russia and things like this, they didn't impeach him, so why are you trying to impeach me? So you have to do that to hold a president accountable because we don't have a king. We don't have a monarch. During the American Revolution, the colonies were separating from King George III because they didn't want to be governed by a monarch. When you understand the creation of the U.S. Constitution, they put checks and balances in place because they were separating from a monarch and they were keeping that from happening again. They were keeping a monarch from happening again. Okay, so no man or woman is above the law. He had to be held accountable. He had to be checked, period. Otherwise, if you're saying that he cannot be held accountable, then you're saying he's a king. Okay, so let's continue. So some Republicans accuse Democrats of having plotted to impeach the president since he was elected. And he got into office because of the Electoral College. Because I saw a number of Republicans, once again, on Wednesday during the 10-hour debate. And they were saying that Democrats are trying to overturn the will of the people. They're trying to deprive 63 million people of their vote. Well, Hillary Clinton got 2.9 million more votes than Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Let's keep it real. So you can't say that that was the will of the people. No, it wasn't. 2.9 million, 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. That was the will of the people. Okay, so it seems like some of the Republicans forgot that. So after Democrats took control of the House of Representatives January 3rd, 2019, that was, remember, during Donald Trump's 35-day partial government shutdown, Nancy Pelosi pushed back on lawmakers who had been advocating for impeachment. Because Nancy Pelosi was very reluctant for impeachment because she knows it's divisive. It's a long process. So she was very reluctant for impeachment. But, you know, she said that Donald Trump was going to self-impeach. She said he was going to self-impeach, which meant his idiotic actions were going to leave Democrats no choice but to impeach him. And that's what happened. So Pelosi pushed back on lawmakers who had been advocating for impeachment, calling it, quote-unquote, divisive, and saying of trying to remove Trump, quote, he's just not worth it, end quote. That position changed in September 2019 after a whistleblower filed a complaint with the U.S. Senate and House Intelligence committees alleging that Donald Trump had used, quote, the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 election, end quote. So I saw a lot of Republicans saying we're too close to an election. We should leave this up to the voters. Well, wait a second. Trump is trying to steal an election. Trump is trying to get Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election. And he's trying to get information to use to hurt his political opponent in the 2020 election. Trump is trying to steal an election. This is about holding him accountable and showing that no man is above the law, but it's also about preserving the integrity of the 2020 election. So when I hear Republicans say, let the people should vote, when I hear Republicans say we should leave this up to the people in the 2020 election, well, you have to preserve the integrity of the election. What I find really odd, what I find really strange is that everybody knows if this was President Barack Obama doing the same thing Trump's trying to do, you couldn't find a Republican that would justify that. You could not find a Republican who would say he should not be removed from office. If President Barack Obama called Vladimir Putin and said, we'll remove sanctions from you if you give me some dirt on Donald Trump, you could not find a Republican who would justify that. Period. We all know that. So on September 23rd, Donald Trump confirmed media reports that a call he had with the Ukrainian leader, Vladimir Zelensky, involved the Bidens and the withholding of aid, but he maintained that he had done nothing wrong. So what makes Republicans' job harder is Donald Trump admitted to all of this stuff. He admitted to withholding the aid. He admitted to, not only did he admit to asking Vladimir Zelensky, Ukraine, to investigate the Bidens. Not only that, on the White House line, he called for China to investigate Joe Biden. That, once again, you're openly asking for a foreign power to intervene in the election. So Republicans can't say he didn't do it because he admitted he did it. He's like one of the dumbest criminals I've ever seen. Okay, so quote, we want to make sure that that the country is honest. We want to make sure that country is honest. It's very important to talk about corruption. If you don't talk about corruption, why would you give money to a country that you think is corrupt? Trump asked reporters. Now, Ukraine has corruption just like the U.S. has corruption. Okay, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Donald Trump talking about vetting somebody for corruption. Okay, but Ukraine had already been approved by the Department of Defense to release the funds that were voted on and approved by Congress to go to Ukraine. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi announced the next day that she, and let me find this here. Let's find this here because I've got the article up here also. Just a second here. All right, how's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in because this type of information I'm breaking down here, you're not gonna find a lot of other places. Okay, and you have to also understand history and understand law. Now, the reason why I knew Trump was going to be impeached, I said this going back to January 2017. The reason why I knew, because I had studied Watergate. I studied Watergate from the break-in to August 8th, 1974, Richard Nixon having a press conference at the White House announcing that he was resigning from office the next day, 12 noon. So because of my analysis in studying Watergate, I already knew what was going to happen with Trump. Okay, so Pelosi announced the next day that she was launching a formal impeachment inquiry. On Wednesday night after the vote, she suggested that she was not yet ready to send the 2 impeachment articles to the U.S. Senate for its trial, saying she needed to know more about the Senate's rules for the trial before she would transmit the articles. Only then could the U.S. Senate begin its trial. Okay, so hearings before the House Intelligence Committee featured testimony from current and former administration officials who said that Donald Trump had been turned against Ukraine by his quote hand grenade of a lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Okay, Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani is another dumb crook as well. Okay, because this right, see, Trump is in no place. He's in no position to point to another country and talk about corruption. You look at Rudy Giuliani, and the question people are asking is, wait a second, who's paying for Giuliani to go back and forth to Ukraine? Where's his money coming from? Then we see his partner that got busted, Lev. They just found out he got $1 million apparently from Russians, and it didn't come into his bank account. It went to his wife's bank account. This was one of the guys they called at the airport with a one-way ticket out of the country. The associates of Rudy Giuliani, and the feds called him at the airport. Right? They arrested him at the airport. They had a one-way ticket out of the country. We've never seen blatant, open corruption like this on this level, like in recent times. I mean, this is unbelievable here. And this guy is the personal attorney of Trump. Now, who was Trump's former personal attorney? Michael Cohen. Where's Michael Cohen right now? In prison. I said this before. I think Rudy Giuliani should really go visit Michael Cohen in prison. Put some money on his books. Have a real long conversation with him. Because, see, Michael Cohen was Trump's attorney for 10 years. He was Trump's attorney much longer than Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani going to end up in a prison cell next to Michael Cohen. So hearings before the House Intelligence Committee featured testimony from current and former administration officials who said that Donald Trump had been turned against Ukraine by his hand grenade of a lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and that they were never given a reason to freeze the aid to Ukraine. Keep in mind, Ukraine needs his aid to fight against Russia. Because Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 and annexed Crimea from Ukraine. This is why Russia was kicked out of the G8. So when you analyze all this stuff, all roads lead back to Vladimir Putin and Russia. When you analyze all this, around every corner is a Russian. So you have to figure out, well, what the hell's going on? The money was released on September 11th amid bipartisan pushback from Congress. But all the money wasn't even released then. It's still about $20 million that hasn't been released. Keep in mind, Trump only released the money after the whistleblower filed a complaint. 1, 2, U.S. Democrats in the House of Representatives launched an investigation. After it became public and Trump got caught, then they released the money. So Donald Trump maintained that a summary of his July 25th call, the July 25th phone conversation with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky showed that their talk was perfect. No, it's not. Democrats said the summary showed him pressuring the head of a country reliant on U.S. aid to help him politically. This right here, this lays out 8 times that he pressured Vladimir Zelensky to launch an investigation. So Donald Trump is the 3rd president, and once again, read this article, read this here. This is from abcnews.go.com. I'll post a link here. The 8 times Trump urged Ukraine's leader to help with investigations. The 8 times Trump urged Ukraine's leader to help with investigations. Okay, that's 8 times in this one call. That's what we know about. So I don't think Trump like actually read this memo of the call. I don't think he actually read this before he had them release it, because this is incriminating. Okay, so Donald Trump is the 3rd president to be impeached in the nation's 243-year history. The 2 previous impeachments were also led by House Republicans. Andrew Johnson was impeached in 1868 in part for replacing a cabinet member without the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. Now remember, so Andrew Johnson was Abraham Lincoln's vice president. So Lincoln gets shot April 14th, 1865 at the Ford Theater by John Wilkes Booth. He dies the next morning at 7:22 a.m. This is before the Civil War ends. Civil War officially ends June 2nd, 1865. Johnson is going to, who's vice president, becomes president, and Johnson is sympathetic to the South, the slave owners, things like this. So when we look at Johnson's going to give a blanket pardon to the Confederacy after the Civil War ends, and the majority of the land that is given to the former enslaved Africans in Special Field Order Number 15, or what is ostensibly known as 40 acres and a mule. He's going to take most of his land back and give it back to the former slave owners. Okay, now 40 acres and a mule did not give land to most former slaves. That applied to coastal land in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. It wasn't land all in the South. It applied to coastal land in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, and it applied to about 400,000 acres of land. Okay, it ends up going to about 40,000 families. Okay, it's about 40,000 families or so. But the land was cut up basically into 40-acre plots. Okay, so it did not apply to all of the former slaves. Okay, approximately 4 million. No. Blackpast.org has a good article dealing with 40 acres and a mule. Blackpast.org, P-A-S-T. They have a good article dealing with 40 acres and a mule. All right. So let me continue here. Okay, so you have Andrew Johnson, and then Bill Clinton was impeached on December 19th, 1998 for perjury and obstruction of justice for lying under oath about an extramarital affair. So we know he lied about, extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. Okay, and Monica Lewinsky, I think she was really unjustly vilified for years, after what happened. Okay, but now the difference between Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, one of the differences is Bill Clinton apologized, and Bill Clinton apologized a number of times for what he did and for lying under oath. Donald Trump won't even acknowledge that he did something wrong. Bill Clinton apologized for his conduct before he was impeached, something that Trump, who was then in private business, said was a mistake. Donald Trump told Chris Matthews, who hosts Hardball on MSNBC, he told Chris Matthews in 1998 that Bill Clinton should not have cooperated with the investigation and should never have said he was sorry. Okay? Donald Trump in 1998 said, quote, "Go after your enemies. I mean, they're after you." Okay, I think that Clinton probably is too nice a guy in a certain respect. I think that's one of the things that happened. Now, both President Andrew Johnson and President Bill Clinton were acquitted in the U.S. Senate, where a 2/3 vote is required for conviction and removal from office. You need 67. So there were 100 U.S. senators. You need 67 votes to convict in the Senate. So, but however, even though Bill Clinton was not convicted in the U.S. Senate, he still is an impeached president because he was impeached in the House of Representatives. Not only that, when Al Gore, his vice president, ran for president in 2000, because Bill Clinton was stained as an impeached president, he couldn't campaign for Al Gore and help Al Gore in the election because he had that stain on him. That stain is permanent. So in the current U.S. Senate, leadership was already tangling over the next phase of Trump's impeachment trial. Senator Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, who is up for re-election in 2020 and must be voted out of office in 2020, he said last week that he was working, quote unquote, in total coordination with the House, with the White House. And he said, quote, "My hope is there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles of impeachment," end quote. Now, let's do a comparison. Nancy Pelosi said that she was leaving it up to her members, to the Democrats, leaving it up to each one of them to vote based upon their conscience. Okay? She said it's an individual vote. She was leaving it up to them to vote based upon their conscience. Here you have Mitch McConnell saying, "I hope there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles of impeachment." Now, on Wednesday, Mitch McConnell took to the Senate floor to push back against Minority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer's call to have witnesses testify in the case, because Mitch McConnell doesn't want any witnesses. So if you don't want any, if there are witnesses who can exonerate Trump, why wouldn't you want millions of people to hear from these witnesses? You only don't want to hear from witnesses when you think they have information that's going to incriminate your boy. So Mitch McConnell said, quote, his decision to try to angrily negotiate through the press is unfortunate, Senator Mitch McConnell said. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, stood by his request on the Senate floor, saying, quote, "I have yet to hear an explanation why less evidence is better than more evidence, particularly when it comes to something as somber, as serious, as important as impeachment of the President of the United States of America." So some people are going back to '98 when Chuck Schumer was in the House of Representatives and running for the U.S. Senate during the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And Chuck Schumer said that he didn't need to hear from, he didn't want any more witnesses or didn't need to hear from witnesses, something like that. He was asked about that by Chris Hayes, I think it was Tuesday night, so it would have been the 17th. December 17th, 2019, on All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC. And we posted, I know on my personal page, Michael Imhotep, I posted it, the clip, and we'll post it here on the thread of the broadcast. Senator Chuck Schumer was saying, what he was talking about was that he was talking about the trial in the Senate, and we don't need to hear from witnesses in the trial in the Senate. We don't need to hear from the same witnesses we heard from in the House of Representatives. He wasn't saying we don't need to hear from witnesses. Okay? So people who want to use that from '98 and say, oh, he is saying something different today. No, he's not. What he's talking about here in the Senate trial is hearing from witnesses we didn't hear from in the House of Representatives. Because Trump is blocking these people from testifying, and some of these people were on the July 25th phone call. All right, so let's look at, so let me give you this article here. Read this one. This is from the NBCnews.com. And I ain't planning to be, really, I didn't plan to be on this long. I really didn't. But this information is deep, and a lot of our people don't understand history, don't understand law, things like this. So I ended up being on here like a lot longer than I thought I was going to be. But it's just so much information. And this is, I study this stuff like daily, as you can probably tell. So I'm going to give you this link to this article here from NBC News. I'm going to deal with one more, just deal with Nancy Pelosi a little bit here. This other article dealing with transmitting the articles of impeachment over to the U.S. Senate. But very quickly, because I have a bunch of stuff here. I mean, this is I have file folders on this type of information, right? But this is just stuff here. You know, I get the MSNBC daily news also with the recap of what happens, because I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. MSNBC is just one of them. Okay, so I get emails from different news outlets throughout the day. All right, but if you want to, if you go to MSNBC.com, you can sign up for their daily newsletter. The MSNBC daily newsletter that comes out usually in the morning. This one comes out early in the morning because I'm still up. It comes out about 12:30 in the morning, 1 a.m. and it gives a recap of the news from the previous day. Okay, and it puts it all there in one newsletter. Some people talk about high crimes and misdemeanors, but don't really know what the hell that is, because they think that's pertaining to federal criminal statute. Okay, it could, but doesn't have to, because federal criminal statute didn't exist when the Constitution was written in 1787. So if we look at New York Times has a really good piece from Charlie Savage, how the impeachment process works. It was originally published September 24th, 2019, updated December 10th, 2019. And one of the things they talk about here is, what is a high crime? What is a high crime? The term high crimes and misdemeanors came out of the British common law tradition. Why? Because the 13 colonies are separating from Great Britain. Okay? So the term high crimes and misdemeanors came out of the British common law tradition. It was the sort of offense that Parliament cited in removing crown officials for centuries. Essentially, it means an abuse of power by a high-level public official. It doesn't mean that you actually committed a felony or a misdemeanor. So one of the arguments that some of the Republicans were making is, well, abuse of power is not a criminal crime. It's not a crime in the federal statute. Impeachment in the Senate trial is not a criminal trial. It is a political process. So it doesn't have to be a felony. It doesn't have to be something that is in federal criminal statute. It doesn't have to be something from the U.S. Penal Code. Okay? It could be an abuse of power, which is one of the highest crimes, if not the highest crime, abusing the power of the presidency. So the term high crimes and misdemeanors came out of the British common law. It was the sort of offense that Parliament cited in removing crown officials for centuries. Essentially, it means an abuse of power by a high-level public official. This does not necessarily have to be a violation of an ordinary criminal statute. In 1788, as supporters of the U.S. Constitution were urging states to ratify the document. That's the ratification process. Alexander Hamilton described impeachable crimes in one of the Federalist Papers. There are 85 Federalist Papers. Read this article from History.com. History.com is the official website of the History Channel. Federalist Papers. This is all about the Federalist Papers, explaining what it is. Because most Americans, period, not just African Americans, most Americans don't know what the hell this is. The Federalist Papers explains the U.S. Constitution. In 1788, the supporters of the Constitution were urging states to ratify the document. Alexander Hamilton described impeachable crimes in one of the Federalist Papers as, quote, those offenses which proceed from the misconduct of men, or in other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust. That's what that's about. The Federalist Papers were written by the people who basically helped to draft and sign the U.S. Constitution. They are of a nature which may, with peculiar propriety, be dominated political as they relate chiefly to injuries done immediately to the society itself. That don't have nothing to do with criminal statute. That has nothing to do with federal criminal statute. It's dealing with the abuse or violation of some public trust. That's what a high crime is. Okay, so read this. There's a lot more to it. I just don't have time to get into it. How the impeachment process works. How the impeachment process works. This is from NewYorkTimes.com. And Representative Justin Amash, who used to be a Republican, he's from Michigan, used to be a Republican, now he's an independent. He left the Republican Party. He talked about this, actually. There's another good document from New York Times, How the Constitution Defines Impeachable, Word by Word. This is by Alicia Parlapiano from December 8th, 2019. How the Constitution Defines Impeachable, Word by Word. And in here, they cite, let's see here. One of the things it says, it talks about bribery, right? What happened here? Uh-oh. My screen went blank. Are we still on? I hope so. Bribery is not defined in the Constitution. So Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution that talks about impeachment. Okay. It says that, let's go to it. Article 2, Section 4. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. But the U.S. Constitution doesn't define what bribery is. So United States criminal statutes say that bribery occurs when a public official solicits or accepts something of value in exchange for an official act. But these statutes were written long after the word was added to the Constitution. These criminal statutes were written long after the word bribery was written in the U.S. Constitution. So Pamela S. Karlan, Karlan, a Stanford professor, asked by Democrats to testify before the House Judiciary Committee, okay, we saw her a couple of weeks ago, said the framers of the U.S. Constitution would have understood the term bribery broadly. She said when you took private benefits or when you asked for private benefits in return for an official act, or somebody gave them to you to influence an official act, that was bribery, end quote. So what we have to do, once again, we have to understand history. We have to understand law. When we read the U.S. Constitution, we have to understand the interpretation and the meaning of the words back in 1787 and 1788, not the meaning of it in 2019. All right. Okay, so, I think we're still on. The screen's not frozen up again. Okay, so I'm going to give you, I'm going to post the links here when we're done. African American business owners, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, and our current promotion, buy 1 month, get 2 months free, okay? And we promote your business in our Facebook Live broadcast, YouTube, but also we put the audio podcast of our Sunday night show and the broadcast that do throughout the week. We put that on 8 different podcast platforms, okay? So we take a 30-second to 60-second commercial, put that into our audio podcast. If you don't have a commercial, email us. You can send us a script. We'll record a commercial for you, or I can put together some bullet points for you as well to help promote your business, okay? So email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's continue. Let's look at this. So I talked about the article pertaining to Nancy Pelosi And this deals with going over to the Senate trial, okay? And NBCnews.com has a good article dealing with this. Also Washington Post. Also Washington Post. But basically what she's saying is until she's not transmitting the articles of impeachment over to the U.S. Senate so the Senate can proceed with the trial until she understands what the rules are of the Senate, because she has to pick the managers from the House of Representatives, from the Democrats. And these managers in the Senate trial for the Democrats, they're going to be the ones that prosecute the trial. Okay? So it's different, even though we talk about a trial, it's different than a regular trial that we see in a regular court. Okay, there's some differences. So if we look at here, page 4, how the impeachment process works. What are the rules for a Senate trial? What are the rules for a Senate trial? And it says there are no set rules. Rather, the U.S. Senate passes a resolution first laying out trial procedures. Okay, laying out trial procedures. Quote, when the Senate decided what the rules were going to be for our trial, they really made them up as they went along, said Gregory B. Craig, who helped defend Bill Clinton in his impeachment proceeding and later served as White House counsel to President Barack Obama. He told this to the New York Times in 2017. For example, Mr. Craig said the initial rules in that case gave Republican managers 4 days to make a case. Okay, 4 days to make a case for conviction, followed by 4 days for the president's legal team to defend him. These were essentially opening statements. The Senate then decided whether to hear witnesses, and if so, whether it would be live or videotaped. Eventually, the U.S. Senate permitted each side to depose several witnesses by videotape. The rules adopted by the U.S. Senate in the 1998 Bill Clinton trial included ones limiting the number of witnesses and the length of depositions, made it harder to prove a case compared with trials in federal court, said former Representative Bob Barr, Republican of Georgia, who served as a House manager during the trial and is also a former United States attorney. Former Representative Bob Barr said, quote, impeachment is a creature unto itself, end quote. The jury in a criminal case does not set the rules for a case and can't decide what evidence they want to see and what they want and what they don't want to see. Okay? So when it comes to, for instance, when it comes to the different witnesses and the different procedures, in the U.S. Senate, you need a simple majority, 51 vote majority. If there's a particular witness and they want to determine whether this witness is going to testify or not, you need 51 votes, not 51 Republicans. You just need 51 votes. Okay? It's a simple majority. Is the Senate obligated to hold a trial? Okay, they also talk about is the Senate obligated to hold a trial. You can read that because it's that's extensive. All right, now NBCnews.com also has a good article. Pelosi says House will wait to send impeachment articles to Senate for clarity on rules. For clarity on rules. Quote, so far we haven't seen anything that looks fair to us, Nancy Pelosi said. And this is from December 19, 2019. So check out this article also. That gets into that. Okay, so hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Also at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. Also at our website, all of my DVD lectures are there. We have my latest DVD bundle pack is the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack, and includes 6 of my latest presentations, including Black Migration 1619 to 2019, 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans, and there's some other lectures there as well. Okay, all right. Look, be sure to listen to the African History Network show and watch us Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF in Detroit. We broadcast live here on Facebook and on YouTube, the African History Network on Facebook. So be sure to follow us and turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Also follow us on our on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep on YouTube. Okay. So remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Remember, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.